As Rabbi Jonathan Sacks once said, to build a nation, you need an army, but to defend a civilization, you need education. And at the heart of that is Hebrew University, with its 25,000 students and a ranking that puts it in the top 5% of all universities worldwide. Not just building the Israeli civilization, but spinning off innovation that impacts the entire world. In fact, Hebrew University has generated over 11,500 patents, won numerous prizes, and has generated 200 plus spin-off companies. One example of how Hebrew University's work is literally changing the world is the area of food technology. It couldn't be more important now, as land and water become scarcer by the year. In that world, imagine we can manufacture meat from its basic building blocks. Surely the future of food is cellular. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening around the world and in Israel. Thank you for joining us and welcome to today's webinar, the fifth in a series we call The Future of Food. With today's topic, the future of food is cellular. This series is designed to highlight innovative solutions that don't just occur in the lab, but are also scaled into commercial enterprises. On that journey together in this series, we've experienced everything from lab-grown milk to meat grown from fungi. My name is David Riccinati, and I am a member of AFHU's Western Region and National Boards. And I have the pleasure of welcoming you to today's program featuring Professor Yaakov Kobi Nachmias, a trailblazer from Hebrew University in Jerusalem, who will walk us through the coming meat revolution. Before introducing Kobi, I wanted to remind everyone that the 2025 year, the year we're in, marks a momentous milestone at Hebrew University and AFHU, where we commemorate 100 years, a full century of our unwavering partnership together. Since the founding of both institutions in 1925, this collaboration has been a beacon of perseverance and solidarity, driving support for not just groundbreaking research, but educational experiences and scholarship for generations of students. So thank you again for being here and for your support of Hebrew University. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Professor Nachmias, as I said, we call him Kobi, is a bioengineer and innovator whose breakthroughs range from the first 3D printing of cells, if you can wrap your head around that, to the first commercial human-on-chip technology. And he's the founding director of the Grast Center for Bioengineering at the Hebrew University. Professor is a recipient of many awards, including the NIH Career Award, the K Innovation Award, the prestigious Rappaport Prize in Medical Research. And on top of that, he is the first scientist outside of Britain to win the Rose Trees Trust Prize. Exciting for us today is he is also bridging the gap between academia and enterprise. Professor Nachmias is the co-founding director of Biodesign Israel, an entrepreneurship program that has educated over 250 fellows since 2013 and launched 10 startup companies. He himself has founded 2 biotechnology startups licensed with the help of Yasum, Hebrew University's tech transfer company. One of them you will hear about today, Believer Meats, is a pioneer in the cultivated meat industry. One just note, we'll have questions at the end of Kobi's talk. Please drop them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And Kobi, thank you for taking us on today's journey. And I will turn it to you.
Thank you, David. It's very exciting to be here today, and thank you for the invitation. I'm always excited to be part of these wonderful talks. So let me pull up my presentation and make sure that Everybody sees the right slides? Yes? Wonderful. So today we're going to talk about the future of food, and I was just start by pointing out that my lab is usually known for developing human models of disease and aging, and we have been on the forefront of discovery of new drugs for COVID-19, for cancer, and today even for obesity. And still, one of the most fascinating things that we are doing has nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with innovating agriculture and the future of food. So let's start our talk by going deep into the past. People have been around this planet for the past 3 million years in one form or another. And the majority of human evolution actually occurred over the last ice age that only ended up about 10,000 years ago. And this was a period of extreme scarcity. So if you think that the last week was cold and the last winter was cold, then you've heard nothing. Because during the last ice age, we had ice sheets going several kilometers in height over North America. And during this period of time, if you manage to discover a holy mammoth and kill it, bringing food for the entire tribe, everybody would celebrate this around the campfire. And to understand why, we need to go into a little bit of nutrition. So if you're my wife or you're a vegetarian, it's very difficult to get nutrition. For every 100 grams of fruits and vegetables, you get about 100 calories, so almost 1-to-1 gram per calorie. You get very little fat and very little protein. It's difficult to build a civilization based on this. On the other hand, if you manage to become an omnivore rather than a herbivore, then you have access to meat. And meat immediately doubles the amount of calories you get into your nutrition. But more than that, it increases the amount of protein you get by 20 folds. Now, the reason this is fascinating is because humans are essentially protein cubes. If you're trying to bring a child into this world, you're trying to bring something that is 30% protein. And consuming more meat means that small tribes in caves could suddenly, from the invention of fire, start having more kids. And you go from 5 people in the cave to 20 people in the cave. And suddenly you can leave the cave and start a village. And this is where we see the agricultural revolutions show up. And it doesn't matter whether you grow rice in China or wheat in the Middle East or you're growing corn in the Americas, that cereal produces not only energy and fat, but also protein as well. But that is a lot more accessible and a lot safer to harvest than hunting holy mammoths. You're getting about 5 to 10% of your diet is going to be protein just from the bread that you're eating. And the excess grain can go and feed chickens for eggs and cows for milk. And suddenly you have both all the protein that you want to build human civilization. But the protein is not the entire story, because the other thing that you're getting with meat, the other thing that we can actually get is fat, a lot of fat. And we need fat because fat is a major component of our central nervous system, of our brain. We need a lot of phospholipids for that. And you can see this in the records. You can see this in human evolution. So if you take a look at the data of non-human primates, and on the y-axis are skull sizes, so the size of our brains, and on the x-axis is millions of years before the present, you can see that the discovery of fire, the invention of cooking, is correlated to the point of time humanoids started having bigger and bigger brains. And we think that it was the introduction of lipids that actually allow this encephalopathy to actually develop, to allow us to develop bigger and bigger central nervous systems. And the agricultural revolution over the last 6,000 years is this tiny, tiny sliver at the end here. Now, this means that we had 2 million years of history, and meat is directly connected to how we feel about ourselves. And this is why, as fascinating as this tofu product is, and this is what my wife eats and my vegetarian kids, it doesn't generate an emotional response. It's a beautiful dish, but it just simply doesn't generate an emotional response. Most of us are completely apathetic to it. This is very different from this. When we see this on the screen, a lot of us smile, and a certain fraction of us can actually smell the meat, even though it's a very low resolution, animation. And the reason for that is that, again, it's ingrained in our brains. We can smell meat grilling from 500 meters away, from half a kilometer away, half a mile away. And the reason it's there is because of these small polyaromatic hydrocarbons that are released to the air. Now, grilling of peppers and baking of cakes also releases similar molecules, but we are simply not sensitive enough to detect them. But we are a very, very good meat detector because, honestly, as a species, we are addicted to meat. So what's the problem? So we like meat. It gives us protein. It gives us fat. Well, the problem is that we like it too much. About 60% of the biomass on the planet is actually livestock. Most of it is cattle. You can look at these beautiful graphics that was made originally by XKCD. Humans are a very small fraction of the biomass of mammals on this planet. Most of the biomass is cows and pigs and sheep. Less than 4% is wild animals. This tiny cube is the biomass of all the wild elephants that we have in the world. There's very, very few of them. And we are using about 30% of the land, of the arable land on the planet to grow these cattle. It's taking massive amount of resources, and honestly, we're done. We can't make anymore. We can't produce anymore. We're using every single acre. And this is a problem. It's a problem because the demand for protein is only increasing, and it's increasing because of urbanization. And we expect it to grow by more than 50% by 2050. And the first problem is that we don't have space. But the second problem, as David very accurately summarized in the introduction, is that we also don't have enough water. Meat production takes about 23% of global freshwater supplies. But because of global warming, and it doesn't matter if you believe it's man-made or not, for every single degree of warming, we are losing 20% of our water resources. So if you take a look at the Colorado River right now, we already lost most of its flow. And the Colorado River, honestly, is the lifeblood of the American agriculture. And this is where most of our cattle receives their water from. So we are running out of resources to make more meat. This has led to a massive interest in plant-based meats over the last several decades. It's mainly thoughts about sustainability, health, animal welfare that drives this need to reduce animal consumption. And the prediction is that it can theoretically get to about 25% of the market. And one of the companies that made a lot of splash in the early years of this technology is a company based in California called Impossible Foods. Impossible Burger is something that you can buy in a supermarket right now. It's something that you saw. It was a company that was founded by Pat Brown back in 2011. It raised more than $2 billion to date, and it's rumored to try to go for an IPO in the next couple of years. So what is Impossible doing? Well, it turns out that Pat and others identified a protein in the roots of soy plants that is a homolog to hemoglobin, to the blood protein that we have that is red. This protein was cloned into yeast and then expressed in bioreactors where you can actually take the yeast that are expressing this protein and they are as red as blood. Because of that, you can add those yeast to your burger that is made out of soy, And suddenly the burger has red inside. Suddenly the burger has the color of meat, and some of the texture of meat that is coming from the soy protein. It's a beautiful technology, and the video, when it was released, caused a lot of people to think differently about plant-based alternatives that were no longer tofu. So this is how it looks like. Keep in mind, this is soy. This is soy with Lagomorph green in color. So the company did a lot of things right. The texture is coming from extruded soy protein, so you can actually get the bite of ground meat. The color is coming from this synthetic protein, and again, essentially you see the color of blood. It even bleeds a little bit if you make it correctly, and it became a very, very popular burger. It has a couple of problems. Problem number one is that it simply doesn't smell like meat. It doesn't taste bad, but it doesn't taste extremely good like meat. Now, if you put cheese on it and ketchup and mustard, you will not be able to tell the difference. It's very, very clear. But there is something missing. And what is missing is the flavor and aroma of meat. And the flavor of the aroma of meat is not coming from the blood, and it's not coming from the muscle. It's actually coming from the white stuff, right? This is fat. This is what our mothers are using to, whether it's chicken fat or lamb fat or beef fat, to cook with over the last couple of decades, because this oxidation of fat gives us hundreds of polyaromatic hydrocarbons that we are so sensitive to. So one of the biggest questions is, how do we replicate this? How do we create this animal fat without killing animals in a more sustainable way? And you'll be surprised, but the answer is not new. The answer has existed for more than 110 years. The first people to think about taking cells from animals and growing them outside the body were Alexis Carrel, a French scientist, a Nobel laureate that discovered one of the first suturing techniques, and Charles Lindbergh, the famous pilot and also the famous mechanical engineer. And they worked together to build the world's first bioreactor, which was this beautiful glass instrument. They would take a piece of chicken heart, place it in the bioreactor, and feed it. Every 2 weeks, they would cut off like half of the chicken heart and throw it to the garbage, and continue to grow the piece of chicken that was left. And that would continue to grow and grow and grow. It grew from 1912 to 1946. And this is why we have quotes from Winston Churchill that talks about cultured meat, that talks about growing an animal without killing an animal. And when a journalist from the Atlantic actually came to Alexis Carrel's lab back in the 30s and talked to one of the postdoc told him that if they would take all the pieces of chickens that are lying around, that they threw over the years, and suture them together, they would get a chicken large enough to cross the Atlantic Ocean to America in a single step. That was the vision back then, so many years ago. And today, cultured meat has changed a little bit, but the concept has stayed the same. The idea is that we can take cells, mainly stem cells, from muscles of animals, and then expand them in a bioreactor in a way that they grow very, very fast. And then we can put them together in a way that creates an edible muscle, right? That's the concept without the need for animal resources or animal cruelty or massive amount of water or land resources. Now, the first person to do that was Professor Mark Post from Holland. And what they did is essentially take cells exactly like we described and grow them into muscle cells. And in 2013, they had the first cultured burger that people could try. Now, the burger cost about $2 million to develop, about about $2 million per kilogram to develop. So it was a very expensive thing. And they tried it in BBC. It was a very interesting experience to see. Actually, they gave it to a food critic to try. So
now, the world's first lab-grown cultured beef
like.
burger has been cooked and eaten at an event in London, funded by a co-founder of Google. The burger cost some £200,000 to develop and was made by using stem cells taken from a dead cow. But scientists hope the technology will eventually reduce the cost of meat production and could even be the answer to growing demand for beef. Critics, however, say that eating less meat would be a much easier way to tackle predicted food shortages. Well, here's a little bit of reaction. This is the food critic Hanny Ruetzler after tasting it.
I was expecting the texture to be more soft. There's really a bite to it. And there is quite some flavor with the browning. And I know there's no fat in it, so I didn't really know how juicy it will be. But there's quite some intense taste. It's close to meat. It's not that juicy, but the consistency is perfect. I miss salt and pepper.
Nicely put, missed salt and pepper. Well, that was Hanny's reaction. What about the food writer?
So this was interesting, right? They gave it to a food critic. She enjoyed the fact that there was texture and she could actually feel the taste of meat. The problem there was that, they not enough spices. So if you take bland meat without fat, you're not getting the full experience of meat. The second problem was the cost. So why did it cost so much? So the problem is really with where they started. It's with the cell source. When you start with stem cells are cells that are usually comes from an embryo or they come from a progenitor cells. There are cells that can make other cells. There are cells that can make muscle, they can make fat. They are immortal, but they are very unstable. And if you don't give them all the growth factors and hormones that they want, they lose their potency and they die very, very quickly. That means that in order to grow them, you have to spend about $200 per liter just to keep them happy. And then they are attached to surfaces. So you have to grow them on these microcarriers. Very low yields, about 2% of the bioreactors becomes biomass. And finally, you have to wait for about a month in order for the muscles to mature. Now, it's faster than a cow. A cow takes 10 months, but it's still very, very slow. This means that if you take all of this information together and push it to the theoretical limit, the best you can come up with is about $6,000 a kilogram. That means there's really very limited space where to take this technology forward. This is a burger that Elon Musk will be able to afford, but very few people will be able to afford similar type of burger. This is where we stepped in. From the Hebrew University, for my lab, I founded a company called Believer Meats, formerly known as Future Meat Technologies. This is a second mover, right? So this is a company that I founded back in 2018. The first investment was Tyson Foods, one of the biggest meat companies in the world. And then in 2021, we raised more than $300 million. So about $400 million raised to date. We became the first unicorn in this space and the largest and fastest moving company. The Series B was led by ADM, Archer's Daniel Midland, one of the biggest Fortune 500 food ingredient companies in the world. So it was very, very exciting to be on this ride. And we were the first company to really break the cost barrier and build an operational production line. So let me tell you what we're doing that is different from everybody else. We start by not going to stem cells. Right? Stem cells are very expensive to grow. They grow slowly. So what we are starting with is fibroblasts. Fibroblasts are the cells that are part of our connective tissue. So every time you get cut in the kitchen and that cut closes up in a few hours, the cells that close the cut and prevent bleeding are the fibroblasts. They grow fast, they grow aggressively, and they really don't need a lot of growth factors and hormones, so they're very cost effective. One of the other interesting things about them is that if you culture them for a long time, they would spontaneously immortalize. They would start growing forever. And when they do that, you have a line that is stable, that doesn't change for more than 1,000 populations doublings. That means that theoretically we could produce, if we collected all the cells that we developed up till now, more than 10 to the power of 200 kilograms of chicken or lamb or beef and everything else that we're doing. And this is a big number. Now, how big is it? It's bigger than the Earth, much bigger. So we're not talking about a chicken that can cross the Atlantic Ocean. We're talking about biomass that is bigger than the mass of the planet. It's actually bigger than the mass of the Milky Way galaxy as well. And even with the new telescopes we have, it's bigger than the mass of the observable universe. That means that every cell line we had, including the one for Wasi sheep that are native to Israel and Baladi chickens that came from Israel, even from ancient Canaan, these lines would grow forever and feed not only every single person on this planet, but every single planet to come. So if you're thinking about barbecue in Mars, these are the cell lines to take. And once you take them, we're not growing them on these carriers. We actually taught them how to grow as single cells. That means they're growing as fast as yeast, moving around as yeast do, and that allows us to get to cell density that is about 20 times bigger, 20 times smaller than any other factory that needs to be. And we did this not only for chickens, but also for sheep and for cows and for other animals we won't mention in a Hebrew University conference. Now, once you grow them, we discovered new mechanisms of how to take them and with soy lecithin actually turn them into animal fat, right? We turn them into schmaltz. And that fat is where all the flavor of the meat is present. And the process of manufacturing is different from ArcPost. What we're doing is we're combining what Impossible Foods did by taking plant-based protein as texture, but adding the cultured animal fat that we have to make cultured chicken. So this is a hybrid product where the texture is coming from the plant protein and the flavor is coming from the animal fat. And the combination of that together gives you the best of both worlds. And this is how it looks like. So you can see here, this is a cultured chicken on the bottom and chicken breast from the supermarket on the top. And you can see it outside here, both grilled and cut. It's going to be very, very difficult for you to tell the difference. Not only is it difficult to tell the difference from outside, nutritionally, they look the same. So the same amount of protein, the same amount of fat, a fraction of the amount of cholesterol that you have, and we have moved extremely quickly. We did a lot of other things. In addition to increasing cell densities, we also dramatically reduced the cost of the feed to these cells. So if you remember, the cost of stem cells, medium food, was about $200 a liter. Today, Believer Meats is under 60 cents a liter. So it's a dramatic improvement by several orders of magnitude. And we've done it not only for chicken, but also for lamb, for beef, for pork, very, very rapid decrease in the cost. So you probably want to know how it tastes like. So here's the video from Future Meat Technologies and Believer Meats. Let us show you. We can take cells from an animal and then grow them without the animal itself.
This is not what you think it is. It is a burger, but here's the catch. This is clean or cultured meat. It's grown in a lab using animal cells. It just tastes like meat. Tastes like a burger.
میت میبرد. مزه گوشت معمولی هم میده.
وقتی که میبریش کاملا احساس گوشت رو داره. بوش هم مثل بوی گوشته.
וואו, בואנה, מדהים, מדהים. אם הייתה פה טעימה עיוורת, אני לא הייתי אומר בחיים שזה לא בשר. מדהים.
The way we make food around the globe for a fraction of the cost, much faster and much more efficiently than ever before. So that's the technology, and you actually saw the product, but let's talk about manufacturing it. You see, there are a couple of companies in the cultivated meat field that received FDA approval for their cells. Some of them are growing with animal components and serum. They rush to get approval even though they are not fully clean, but they can't manufacture it at scale. That's a big, big problem. So let me show you how we're doing it very, very differently. And the way we do it is by growing the cells in bioreactors. And when you do that, you have a problem. The problem is that cells growing in a bioreactor secrete waste products. Now, if you're growing yeast, and you put them in grape juice, then that waste product is actually alcohol, and at the end of the day, you have a beautiful glass of Chardonnay, which is great. It's great. The problem is that if you're doing it for animal cells, they don't secrete alcohol. They secrete ammonia. So at the end of the day, you have a bioreactor filled with a beautiful glass of urine, and that kills the cells. So we had to develop a technology that would combine a liver and a kidney essentially to actively remove the ammonia and the lactate, the waste products from the bioreactor in order for us to become more efficient. And this is exactly what we did. So we start by creating this artificial kidney that can wash the ammonia away, and then we develop a unique technology that can extract the ammonia and the lactate like a liver and rejuvenate, essentially recycle the media. This allows us to do something very, very unique. In the very same factory that is going to make cultivated meat, we're going to make lactate, which is the building block of biodegradable plastic. So the same factory that is making the meat is also making the packaging material for it. So it's very, very exciting. And this is how a production looks like. So, a month-long process that can make for over 47 days continuous manufacturing. This is the first time that anybody did this. We have 2 papers in Nature Foods over the last couple of years actually showing this technology, really transformative in the world of cultivated meat. There are interesting advantages to this technology. The first one is the massive cell density, as we said. But the second one is the fact that it requires very little space. Think about your kitchen at home. In your kitchen at home, in the average size kitchen, I can put 1,000-liter bioreactor. It's roughly the size of your refrigerator. It's inside. On the outside, it's bigger. It's your entire kitchen probably. In this bioreactor, in your kitchen, I can make about 3,000 kilograms of wet biomass every month. If I combine it with plant-based material, that means I can make 2,500 chickens every month in your kitchen, or 12 cows. So I don't know if you have space in your kitchen for 12 cows a month. Usually a cow needs about 2 acres to grow. It takes them about 10 months to grow. So it means that I can, on the size of your kitchen, I can probably have enough space to grow 120 cows for 12 months. It's a massive advantage in space, a massive advantage. And this is not theoretical. So this is the Believer Meat facility right now. This is a photo from a few months ago. It's in North Carolina, in Wilson County, what used to be known as Hawks County, soon to be Cultivated Meat Company. It's about a 200,000 square feet facility that can potentially make more than 30,000 tons of cultured meat a year in the United States. And it's extremely exciting to see something that started from a small lab at the Hebrew University, well, a large lab at the Hebrew University, but still a small place at the Hebrew University in Givat Ram, and go all the way to this massive, massive factory. From the environment perspective, we see massive advantages, not only in land and carbon emissions, but also in water utilization. In cattle, we project something like 80% less water use, which is massive. But in chickens are very cost effective, and produce relatively little carbon emissions. However, they use a lot of water, and we are going to be using 94% less water than modern chicken production. So it's a huge advantage today. And I want to show you some of the implications of this technology. This is land utilization in the United States circa 2018. It's from Bloomberg. And the area that we live in is this pink area over here. It's relatively small. It's about 69 million acres. We live in a small part of the land. This is how much we use for agriculture in brown. This is the amount of forests we have left. But you see all this yellow? 654 million acres? This is the amount of land we have for pasture. This is for cows. Cows have more space in the United States than people. If we turn the United States to cultivated meat, the amount of land we would need is this tiny fraction over here. That means all of this area can theoretically be reforested. And we're talking about removing 52 billion tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. Conceptually making the United States carbon neutral for almost a decade, which is something that nobody else can do. No other technology can afford. The last thing I want to show you is a new invention from my lab. We just published in Nature Communications just a month ago. And this is a new technology altogether. It's called metamaterials. It's a newly incorporated company that I'm now raising money for. I'm founding it together with one of my PhD students, Muhammad Goshe, that has been involved here. This is a technology for injection molding of meat. Essentially, taking the plant protein, taking the cell-based protein that you have, and making a whole cut out of it, whether it's a lamb chop or a T-bone steak, or anything you can imagine. And the advantage of doing this with injection molding is that it's a massively scalable technology. It's not 3D printing. 3D printing is slow, it's expensive. We're talking about something that is an $800 billion industry right now and can fundamentally transform the alternative meat market. And if you want to see how it looks like, I have another video for you. So this is a blind tasting by Michal Ansky, a very famous chef in Israel from MasterChef. Michal did not know what she's going to taste. She had no idea what we brought her on stage for. She was actually looking at the salmon that was produced by this guy. His name is Ofek. He's the head of Mushi, an amazing company that is making plant-based salmon. But we gave her the lamb chop from Moonsteak, and let's see her reaction.
There's a future, not only in the ocean for your salmon, and I'm really excited to taste it. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
You have to take a bite of the lamb chop, and then we have to clear the stage because
I'm sorry. I'm going to take it bite.
Yeah, you chose a beautiful one.
Do you see the fat? That's amazing.
Need to try the fat.
Oh my God. No. How?
Kobe, that's amazing. Wow.
No, I want to explain. It tastes like lamb. It's not similar. It's almost exactly.
Where are our friends from Abu Dhabi? You need to say whether it's lamb or not.
And the most interesting thing here is the fat, the way it feels in my mouth. It's juicy. And this is really, when we speak about food, we want to crave it. We want to eat, you know, when you're saying lamb chops, you want to hold those lamb chops and bite them. It's still politically correct. And I have this experience when I eat it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you guys as well. It's been a pleasure to give this seminar today. And thank you for the invitation.
Kobe, fantastic stuff. We've got lots of questions, but my first suggestion to you is I'm going to rename this talk. And we're going to rename it Feeding the Universe, or maybe Barbecuing on Mars with schmaltz made with an artificial kidney. I think that's what we should call this talk.
Yeah.
So in all seriousness, incredibly impressive, exciting stuff. And let me start with the practical question. Mm-hmm. So when is the meat going to be available and how much is it going to cost?
So that's a wonderful question. The FDA approval is pending. So we expect to receive it over the next weeks to maybe months. The new administration that came in upended a lot of things inside the FDA, so things are in motion, but we are at the end of the process, so we expect it relatively soon. The factory is right now in the process of commissioning, so we expect to be out in toward the end of the year, the beginning of next year. This is going to be exciting. We're going to be the first company that actually has a working factory to make it, and the timeline is really not dependent on us anymore. So we did everything right. We're at the end of the process. We're waiting for all the stars to align.
And so that delicious burger compared to that sort of 20th century burger that comes from that thing that walks around 500 million acres of our land, how's the price going to compare?
Right. So we are Believer Meats is right now thinking about targeting it as a premium cut, but essentially as organic level product. So if you think about chicken as the first product, so imagine a cost that is similar to organic chicken. Things might change. There is a very talented management team right now with people from Cargill and Kraft Heinz and that are leading this. Right now, it's going to be above my pay grade. The technology was right. Getting the company up to $1 billion and making sure the technology works was a fascinating ride. To manage a CPG company is above my pay grade.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a different act. I will agree with you on that. So people have asked, you've used the term clean meat. Why do you call it clean meat?
I'm not sure that you want to know.
Okay.
So when we are slaughtering meat right now in meat packing plants, we can't slaughter every chicken individually like we did 100 years ago. When you did, when your grandmother, our grandparents, right, killed a chicken in the Balkans, they would, take a chicken, they would kill the chicken, they would clean the chicken individually. Today it's done in mass. That means there are residues, there's fecal material in most of the chicken that we eat. The problem with the fecal material is that it naturally includes salmonella. That's a natural bacteria that grows in chicken's guts.
And that means that this is one of the reasons why you have to cook chicken completely and thoroughly. You can't eat raw chicken. It's dangerous and it's life-threatening. That's one of the, when you hear Gordon Ramsay cutting into a chicken and seeing it a little bit pink and yelling at one of his chefs, are you trying to kill someone? That's the reason. But in cultivated meat, there is no gut. So there's no salmonella, right? That means there is no life-threatening bacteria and there is no need to use antibiotics, which are a huge problem. Antibiotic use is a huge problem and contributes around the world for the emergence of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And this type of technology can fix many of those problems.
Well, you've convinced me. I'm lining up for that product. You're right. I didn't want to know, but I'm glad I do. Okay, the $64 million question has come in. Are you ready? Is it kosher? And can I eat it with dairy?
Wow, it's a good question. So
yeah.
there are two questions. One, is it kosher? And two, is it part? Regarding kosher, cells that are taken from, if cells were taken from a live animal, you have an issue of Ever min chai, because we're not allowed to eat like a leg of an animal if it's still alive. That's not a problem for most of our stuff because we took it from an animal that was slaughtered already, from discarded tissue mainly, or from eggs. So that's not an issue for us. It might be an issue for other companies, not for us. The second problem is whether the embryo is considered alive or not. So this is a still issue under debate. And until you have a product, nobody's going to make a decision on it. There's one decision that was made that it's kosher, and then another decision that was made that we're not certain. So it's still under debate. There is really no reason why it shouldn't be kosher. Let's put it like that. The second question is even more difficult, whether it's parv. And there, one of the arguments is that it's batel bashishim, right? Because you took such a tiny piece of the animal and you did it times a billion. Is it still meat? Two arguments. One, no. Two, yes. And the argument is that...
Only two arguments?
Yes. Because if you can taste something, it's not batel. The fact that you still have the flavor of the animal there means it's not batel. So you're kind of like shooting yourself in the foot. Two possibilities, and I'm sure that all the Jewish organizations are going to come together and make a single decision for everybody to follow. As you know, we usually make our minds together.
Yes, we're very collective that way. You're absolutely right, Kobe. That's going to definitely happen sometime in the next 100 years, maybe. Okay, so there's lots of questions, or people are sort of interested. Does this technology apply in other ways? And I'll give you some examples. One is, can you put protein into vegetables? Not sure if that's possible, but it's an interesting question. And can you make actually an artificial kidney if you can sort of create the mechanisms to cleanse ammonia, which is one of the functions of the kidney? Can you actually do that for humans?
Great question. So first of all, the idea of adding protein to plants is not new. Plants already have protein, and there are genetically engineered corn and soy that have 3, 4, 5, even 10 times the amount of protein that they have today. And we've been doing this for a long time. So the soy, genetically modified soy, one of the huge advantages of it is that it has a lot more protein. It's resistant to heat, to drought. It's resistant to pests, so you need to use less pesticides, and there are huge advantages there. When it comes to medical technologies of what we're doing, is that yes, the answer is yes, and there are very exciting ones. The issue is not artificial kidney, because those are relatively easy, but artificial livers. Livers can degenerate. And the ability to build a bioreactor like we did and connect it to a patient might enable those patients to essentially survive for several months and regenerate their own livers. So it's very exciting technology, and we are fascinated by it, and it's definitely possible, and it's something that we are considering in the future from the Hebrew University. Another interesting applications is the fact that we produced about 40 different cell lines. Those represent about 1% of the total cell lines produced or deposited in ATCC. It's a massive endeavor. Many of them can be used to generate vaccines, for example, cost efficiently. And this is one fascinating areas of inquiry for us.
I'm not even sure what to say. Artificial liver that allows a person to regrow their own liver. That is some Hebrew University kind of innovation. I love that. So we're going to wrap up here with one last question. So it was interesting that when you showed the nutritionals of the meat, that your meat, Believer Meats, had lower cholesterol. Can you engineer meat to be even healthier? And some of the things that we've all been told about what's problematic about eating a lot of meat, can you sort of engineer that out of the meat that you're creating?
Yeah, so there's when we talk about meat and we talk about the problem of meat, it's usually we're talking about the saturated fat aspect of it. The meat is a very high level of protein. It's relatively healthy for you. Chicken meat is very lean, very little fat, so it's very healthy for you. Red meat has a lot of saturated fat. It can go to about 20% saturated fat. That's a problem because saturated fats causes inflammation. Saturated fats causes arteriosclerosis. Saturated fat is something we can control. We can dramatically reduce it. We can reduce it to about 50-70% down from red meat. And we can even change the type of fat. So theoretically, you could make a meat product that has more omega-3s than salmon. So you can have a high level of...
Don't tell that salmon guy you were sharing the stage with there that you're going to one-up his salmon.
Ofek is brilliant, and I love his product, and I love his company.
It's like an omega-3 arms race over there in Israel.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You can do a lot of different things. I think the first thing is to get into the market and do the first steps, and to get the management. There's a beautiful management company that's their job to get there.
Yeah, exactly. That CPG management company.
Kobe,
I on behalf of American Friends of Hebrew University, I really want to thank you for taking the time this evening in Israel to share your innovations with us. We had about 100 people from all around the world listening to your presentation, and I think you are really a fantastic example of how innovation at Hebrew University comes out of the lab and in North Carolina is now going to change the world. So we look forward to eating all of our Believer meats, and I look forward to seeing you on my next trip to Israel, and thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the invitation.